Hi, everyone. Welcome to Limitless edX. And today's topic, we are going to be exploring abandoning the sinking ship, why capable teachers are fleeing public education amid financial mismanagement and turning to alternative education. My name's Jeanette Easton, and I'm so happy to be here with you today. And we also have the lovely Andrea.
I'm Andrea Harris, and thank you for tuning in today. We actually wanted to talk more about this as it has been in the news all over recently about how Thames Valley District School Board had a upper admin retreat to Toronto that cost almost $40,000. And the reason why this was approached as such a gasping discrepancy is because there's been so much in the news recently about how Thames Valley is also in debt. So while the school board is millions of dollars in debt, it seems like the public saw the retreat of almost 40,000 to be quite a luxury among upper admin. Now, I know that people have shared like different budgets, different pockets, different buckets collect for resources through the board and the funding module. However, it's interesting to us as educators, and truthfully, every single teacher and principal in the system still, and EA and ECE, that it would be such a high cost when it seems like the budget constraints everywhere else are being forced on us, such as we don't have enough money for EAs at our school. Let's cut that down. So it was really interesting, Jeanette, to see the different reactions in people. I actually had a ton of engagement with people sending me stuff and wanting to really talk about it. So I thought that this would be a great springboard for us to be able to have this discussion because first and foremost, I don't think it is only Thames Valley. That's an issue. I think it's every single school board across everywhere because the system is broken, right? So when the government is not writing a blank check, however, the school boards have so much flexibility in their funding and how they spend things or how that appears right now to the public is how things are going on. It makes for a really interesting topic of discussion when we see people not being able to afford groceries and the economy reflecting something very different. So I don't know. What are your thoughts?
I think it's they are burning money. That's what they're doing. Management, I've worked for the Catholic boards and it's the same thing. The way there is no money for resources that really affect safety. Without safety in a classroom, it is not sustainable. And violence is a huge issue. And with inconsistency in resources and educators, it's just going to snowball. And when you don't have the people there to keep these kids safe, we are going to start seeing just an influx of even more issues until it snowballs out of control. And I don't know, I've been behind the red ropes at head office, and quite frankly, they give each other raises. They take money from all, so they'll, allocate some money or something to the teachers, but you're only allowed to spend it in a certain way. And they get a cut from how it's spent. So say you get $170 for resources for your class, but $30 out of times how many classrooms and how many schools, that goes back to them on top of the tax dollars, on top of this snowball effect of money with no accountability. And we have so much management and it just doesn't make sense anymore. The most important people are on the ground level, and that's where the money should be going. The secretaries, the custodians, the EAs, the ECEs, the teachers, the principals, all the arteries that keep everything functioning, that's where the money should be going. And they're keeping teachers in jobs that quite frankly need to be fired. People who have been you know, predatory, accused of sexual misconduct. Why are they there? I've even saw a teacher who went into another room, assaulted another staff in front of children. The victim, the other educator, was not permitted back, and the person who had done the assault, after doing some stupid 3-day course, was allowed to go back into his classroom with special needs children. Why is someone like that being employed by the board? And there are so many, like, this is one of a gajillion stories that are, we can't employ people like this when it comes to our children.
Definitely. You brought up so many good points that I would like to talk about. I'm going to have
Go for
trouble
it.
narrowing it down. First of all, to put this into context as well, the list was published in, I believe it was the London Free Press about, and you know what, anyone can look this information up too. I believe the Sunshine List in Ontario is very, very outdated. It's any government employee who makes over 100,000, their name is published and you can look it up. So you can look up anyone. It's very interesting to see. So this would be all public information. You can look up any school board in Ontario and look up how much their administration makes and see their wages. So obviously this list was published of the upper admin. So Jeanette and I aren't talking about wages where they're maybe making 150,000, maybe 180,000. No, like the director of the education for Thames Valley was making like, oh, I want to say about 320,000. And the other upper admin as well had all received raises. So in the article that was published, it had their previous wage, I think it was 2021, and then their wage in 2022, or I could be mistaken. It could have been 2022 and then their wage in 2023. And there were some significant raises there. Now, I did have a few admin reach out because they still follow me and talk to me and let me know. I think the director of HR had a position change. So that's why her percentage was so high. I think she got a raise of about 30%, but it's astronomical money. I don't think a lot of people realize that early childhood educators and educational assistants don't make a lot of money. Like they start at like $30,000 and maybe max out just over 40. And forgive me if I'm wrong. I think this is different in all school boards, but I know at least in the school board I taught at forever, which was Thames Valley, so many EAs were also going to second jobs. They worked at group homes in the evenings or overnights just to make ends meet. And my goodness, if you were a single parent, it was really, really difficult. So the discrepancy between a director of education making over $300,000 a year, I understand. I'm not against money. I'm not against making money, but just in terms of having it structured more like a corporation where there's a CEO making an exorbitant amount of money, this is not that. This is a publicly funded institution where people are actually giving them their paychecks through their tax dollars. And I hate saying that because I used to hear that all the time and I was like, you're not paying my wage, but truthfully, it's funded by tax dollars.
And to be honest, like the person in like positions of responsibility, I do think they should be paid well because someone does have to carry the weight.
Yeah,
Don't get me wrong. But I'm actually kind of a little bit in contrast to what you said. I'm kind of, all those smaller positions too in management that are kind of created to hide employees that should be fired, people that are just, you don't need like how many policy developers or like there's a lot of in between positions that are just in management that don't need to be there because then it's just a whole bunch of people, sending a memo to send another memo to send another memo to scratch. You're not
absolutely.
you're not getting anywhere. It's just like adds to these layers of bureaucracy and actually gets us
Definitely.
nowhere.
For those of us who are on X, there's endless stories about government employees. And this isn't reserved to just the school system, but how maybe one person might report to seven different people. Like it obviously is not very well organized and it's bureaucratic waste. And I do think that that money could be so well spent. But I think it's a well-oiled machine at this point when they also, I have heard so from many other people that people get kickbacks from the resources that are purchased through the board office. I personally don't have any information about that. I would love to see it if anyone has proof of it. But when there are dictates about what resources that you have to buy and they're astronomical in price, it doesn't make any sense why you choose to go with a certain resources versus another that you know is better. So even to the very basic level, as teachers, we used to get about $150 a year to spend on our resources for our whole class for the whole year. It's not a lot. You always go over and you always spend your own money. So, for example, we would be cautioned to only use about $100 the first order to set up your classroom, and then you'd have $50 left over, maybe about Christmas time when you run out of stuff. So the markers and even like, oh my goodness, chart paper in the web store that you had to order from the board office with this money, you couldn't take the money elsewhere. It's like you're budgeted it, and here we're going to give you the store you can order it from. And the prices are so much higher than they would be if you just went to Walmart or Staples or got a teacher appreciation deal. So that's what ends up happening is most teachers spend their own money because they can't get their money to last very long through the web store. So I think that is a huge topic that we could probably have a whole podcast on, the ridiculousness of the waste that is spent on that type of thing.
Oh, for sure. And I remember we were talking about just with these resources, they don't ask the teachers, what do you want? What are your community needs? How can they don't have those conversations. It's a kind of it's a downpour communication. There is no and unions aren't doing I understand unions started good, but it has spun into something that is um just out of control now, and they are just spending a ton of money and not doing anything for the educators. There's no improvement of their situations. The violence is still continuing, and it's going to continue because if you're getting paid 30 to 50 grand and you're getting like assaulted on a daily basis, are you going to want to return to that when you can get a grocery store job or a job at Costco for far less abuse, and it's not sustainable?
It absolutely isn't. And that is a really good point because I often share with people when I resigned from the school board, although there were a lot of compounding issues during the pandemic. Um, I felt like I had a weighted blanket that was on top of me that I didn't know that was lifted off after I resigned. It became an instance where I didn't really honestly know the weight that I was carrying with the profession that we're in. And I think a lot of times parents don't often hear about the violence in the classroom unless they have a child in a classroom with a violent student. So the violence that we're talking about can be so severe and daily, and then with nothing being done at the level of any consequence to really violent actions like throwing furniture, throwing desks, tearing apart rooms, like hurting other kids, assaulting teachers. It becomes an issue where like the educators are being burnt out. And I know that we do have bad apples where they know how to work the system and get their 120 plus short-term days, plus their sick days, plus all the other days. And granted, some people need that. So, for those listening, I understand I have used disability during surgeries and unexpected illnesses that come up. You do need it. But for the ones that work the system year after year and are always taking their leave sometime in October, parents can just watch for that right now and see which ones are exiting. I was on a Facebook thread or reading through it on a private chat group of teachers in Ontario, and one was posing a question this week about the level of violence in their classroom, and they were looking to hire a private lawyer for their situation. It had escalated to such a degree they were going to take legal action, and the thread was all hundreds of other teachers in the province who agreed but we can't sue because we're part of a union. So you can't actually hire a private attorney because you are part of the union. And then the union, what do? Nothing. They do nothing. Their union advice to violence in the classroom is, well, you have 120 days, take them.
You know what I did?
What?
So I was pregnant at the time, and they pulled my CYW in a violent spec ed class, and the kids liked me. So things were moving, but I still needed somebody there because they still would, lose their nuggie sometimes and needed, a safe space to retreat to. So I needed support with that, because of my being pregnant. So I went to the principal and I was like, oh, well, you have to get someone in there. And he's like, oh, well, we don't have the money. And I said, oh, well, you're not going to have a teacher pretty soon. I know you can call for extra help. So you go ahead and call. There's these staffing companies. I'm like, you go ahead and give them a call. I can give you their number, or else you're going to be in there teaching them. I had somebody in there within like 24 hours.
Yeah.
You have
Well,
to stand your ground. I could not call the union. They would have done absolutely nothing about it. And yeah, you kind of have to uh you really have to put their back between a wall. And for those of you, another thing that I did, because a lot of violence in a classroom, and I was a CYW at the time, I had gone to the kids and the violence was persisting and they needed to get staffing, but they weren't listening to us. So what did I do? I went into that room and I told all the kids, you go home and tell all your parents to call the school and complain that this child needs support and help, and you are being the voice for that child to get the support and help and education that they need, and for you to get it as well, because this situation cannot continue. Obviously, with all those phone calls, we got the support, and you had to be that squeaky wheel. And it might be, a temporary solution with the staffing challenges. I don't know if it's going to be as effective as it was in my day, but
I agree. You know what? And that is one of the common lines all teachers give to parents is that please, please, if you have an issue, please call the superintendent. But I think from a larger scale or a wider lens, it's just the system is unsustainable. And you brought up a really good point as well about the teachers that they do keep on staff or admin as well that really shouldn't be there. We had a case of a principal who had been hired in Thames Valley. Everyone will know who I'm talking about. And she was going to come to my school, and the parents knew about the background because it was in the news, and her husband, the principal that was supposed to come to our school, her husband, and she stayed with him, had child pornography on his computer and was convicted of it. And he used to be a teacher, and he had this story about how I don't know, it was a bullshit story. It was ridiculous. It was not truthful. You could read his trial record at the time because it was readily accessible online. And instead of putting it to the principal that was not appropriate to remain married to a pedophile, they kept her on staff, and she was at the board office for quite a while and then moved to like a high needs school. And truthfully, I heard she was a wonderful principal, but in my book, I don't care how good you are at your job. If you're choosing to remain to go home to somebody who's causing crimes against children, it's horrific. That is the lowest of the low, and you shouldn't be employed.
no, that's morally actually reprehensible. I couldn't, as a child advocate, and I know, Andrea, you feel like you're a strong child advocate. It's not even an option to
No.
sustain, like, no. It's yeah, there's a lot of reprehensible behavior, and this is why it's better for a lot of the talented teachers have left. And
Yeah.
then the talented teachers that have stayed behind are the duct tape and chewing gum, but they are going to be stretched beyond limit and things are going to start to break. And quite frankly, once the families get funding so that they can choose, it's going to change the game. And quite frankly, I know a lot of people are very weary about this whole, taking accountability and um, but it's not a bad thing. We should all be accountable to each other in, many ways. It's not, um, yeah, I don't know. Do you see accountability as a bad thing? Because I don't.
Oh my goodness, I see accountability as a huge catalyst for growth in every single person. When you take accountability for every aspect of your life, I do believe that that is the springboard to like real and lasting change for the better in your life. You don't want to hire somebody, for example, if you were rebuilding a house, we always talk about you bought a fixer-upper and you found out the foundation is not great, are you going to want to hire a contractor that doesn't stand in integrity and you give him a check and he does half the work and walks away and leaves you high and dry? No, but people don't understand. I think they are beginning to see more and more that that has been happening at the schools in the school system, in the education system for so long. I think a lot of people just think, oh, it is never going to be solved. There's always been corruption. We can't do anything about it. It's never going to get better. But then they stay supporting that system. So that's at that point where I couldn't any longer. When I saw what it was doing to children, I was like, I can't. I don't understand how yeah, I just don't understand any of it. And regardless of whether there's accountability, for example, in the case where upper school board admin are spending extravagant amounts on a retreat, if there's accountability, it's to one person. It's not to them all. There's always one fall guy, and then it's not like everyone else is going to be like, oh, you're right. I had a 20% raise while everyone else was, the children were suicidal and JK. I shouldn't have done that. There's just no discussion on it.
No, it's the spending is just insane, and people need to be open to accountability. Like you said it perfectly. And that growth piece from every aspect. If we want to support our future, our legacy, our children, accountability needs to come from yes, the educators, yes, the parents, yes, everyone that is in their lives, so that we could all grow together and show what that will look like. And there is so much growth in the alternative education space that these educators underestimate their abilities, the parents underestimate their influence, and their kids are growing like 2 years in the span of like a few months or a year. So they are doubling their improvement at such a quick rate once you start bringing those pieces together in alignment. And there will be substantial growth, and there'll be more money. And when they amalgamate the school boards.
That could be a whole other topic, but please share with everyone the information. They've been talking about that for years. Just to
Yeah,
preface, they have been talking for years about why Ontario, of all places, has a separate Catholic and a separate public system
yeah.
in education.
Uh, Legislation has changed. So we'll save that for the next podcast. So be sure to tune in, because we have lots of juicy things that sometimes are challenging to share on social media. We do get shadow banned and things don't upload, and there are challenges in sharing some of these things because they do it quietly. But I think that it needs to be brought to the forefront. There's going to be a lot of change, but it needs to happen. This mismanagement of funds cannot continue. It
Absolutely. Well,
culture, the everything.
yeah, just as you would have to have an uncomfortable conversation with a friend or a spouse or a family member or a coworker even who was really, really out of integrity and doing things that were not aligned and not in, say, for example, kids' best interests. It's absolutely uncomfortable, but would it be better to stay silent about it, right? Who would you want in charge of your teaching your child? They're so impressionable. So I do feel like we're at a great direction right now with many more families recognizing they have freedom once they withdraw their kids. They have freedom to teach them at the pace, their children at the pace that they would like. They have freedom to take days off. They have freedom to just spend time in joy with your kids. I know a lot of families worry about how they would be able to do it themselves, but honestly, parents can do a better job. I think we've been programmed for decades to think that we're not capable, and there are kids, right? You totally can do it. And there are people out there who are willing to help you do it.
Yes, you have so many options, and it's going to be a very wild ride coming up, and I am here for all of it. But we are, it's really an exciting time to be alive. Like the direction everything is going to go, and just the nepotism that I experienced at the school board it's absolutely horrible. And people need to realize, I know a lot of people in these upper management think that they're safe and nothing could ever happen. The pressure will start to come up, so you will have those that jump ship, but it's also going to be a numbers game. With homeschooling having, it's gotten bigger, alternative education, the numbers have gotten bigger. So less kids means less teachers that you need, means less management that you need, and it will start to impact the top. And teachers are being, you can only put them in a pressure cooker for so long, especially like some have 36 kids in their class or crazy numbers. It's
You know what? I haven't even shared this with you, so I'll let you know right now, but I think it's already happening. I know most homeschooling families know you do have to let the school board know that you are affiliated with, that you will be homeschooling. You have to fill out a form and sign it. Super easy, very straightforward. It's one page and it doesn't take long. But I did mine early. They have to receive them every year by September 1st. That is in PM. Oh goodness, I'm going to have to look that up, but it is in this homeschooling laws and regulations that you have to do it. And this year, Jeanette, I emailed mine early in August to Thames Valley, and they didn't get back to me for over a month. And I had written in the email, I look forward to you confirming you received this. So it was very polite. I contacted them 3 times. I also called, and then yeah, and then finally she had responded that they accidentally got my email wrong and yada yada. It was very, very busy, but I think it's from an influx of kids because I did email the form in, so I'm not sure how they could get the email incorrect from the email they received.
yeah, excuses, but also kindergarten, if you're in kindergarten, you don't even have to send it in if they're
Yeah,
not, if you've never signed up for kinder, um,
yeah.
you're not even on record. So do you,
Yay.
and yeah, connect with groups around you and everyone, to all of you who are scared of what's coming, don't be. It is going to be the most, once the dust settles, because change, there is like an element of chaos and stuff, but it is just going to be so amazing. And I know like the money will, budgets do not balance themselves, despite what some politicians think. But we will get to a better economic place once these hard decisions are made and the dead weight is cut.
Mhm. So thank
So
you so much for joining us, everyone, today in our discussion. I know that this was such a huge hot topic among so many people that we have engaged with over the last 3 weeks since the news has been coming out more and more about mismanagement of funds and how that affects your child's education. So we appreciate you listening, and we always look forward to more suggestions for topics moving forward. We have an ongoing list from parents who actively listen.
have a great night.